My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today we're going to talk about normative male alexithymia. So let's break that down because most people don't know what that means. Normative, pretty easy. It means normal. Male, I think that's self-explanatory. And alexithymia, direct translation would be without words or emotions. To be more specific, it means that someone has difficulty expressing or identifying or processing their emotions. So therefore, when we put this together, we have normative male alexithymia, meaning that it's very normal to expect your average man to not know what his feelings and emotions are, have difficulty expressing them, or even processing feelings and emotions. But it begs the question, is this actually normal? Well, just because it's prevalent, just because we see it a lot, doesn't make it normal, and it doesn't make it okay. In actual fact, this is an adaptation to an environment that doesn't allow young boys to express feelings and emotions. And so therefore, they have difficulty expressing their emotions down the line. So no, this is actually caused by culture, it's caused by our society, it's caused by the families of origin. And so no, in the normal human development of human beings, it's not normal to not know what your own feelings and emotions are or having a productive way of expressing them. This is actually a trauma response, usually through some type of neglect or being told to be a certain type of way, which is actually not only traumatic, but it's abusive to the child. So let's ask the question, do women have alexithymia? They do, but the percentages are much lower. Now, why would this be? This is because young girls, women, are being encouraged to be able to express their feelings and emotions. They're being asked, what do you feel? How do you feel? And people want to know how they feel, and it's okay. So they become very good at knowing what their feelings and emotions are. This is to be expected. So why would a woman or a girl have alexithymia? Well, it could be a lot of reasons, but typically, again, because society encourages women to have feelings and emotions, it usually would be from the family of origin where there's some type of trauma or neglect there. So it doesn't take that much of a leap to understand that if men have this, the reason why they have it is from the same trauma and neglect a woman would. It's just that it's a societal expectation that men are okay to be in that position. Now, why is alexithymia a good thing? It's actually not. But it also begs the question, what is the difference between a man being stoic and a man who has alexithymia? This question comes up a lot because is it an ideal for men to live up to the standard of being, let's say, the strong silent type? And it actually is. So you can't blame women, right? And we can't just blame men. We can't blame society in general, I guess, because there's a lot of positives, let's say, of being a stoic person. But there's a big difference between being stoic and having alexithymia. And I think I could do a whole show on this. Maybe I'll do that next week. But let me do a quick version of it right now. When a man is stoic, he knows what he feels. He has emotions and feelings. He knows how to process them. He knows how to express them. Except that most of the time, if those feelings and emotions get in the way of an action, he will choose the action and not necessarily let the feelings lead him to what he needs to do. In other words, the man will lead with logic and he'll lead with reasoning. So it doesn't matter if you feel bad, depressed, annoyed, frustrated. If you have to get something done, you just do it. You don't sit in the emotion, you just worry about what is the most productive action. And that's how they do that. So that would be the stoic side. Alexithymia, you can see some of the same results, where a man just puts all his feelings away to get an action done. But inside, he's not actually doing the processing. So he doesn't know how to identify his emotions. And if he does this long enough, he's going to lose that ability. Not that he can't gain it back later, but he might not even know that he has the problem. Why does this happen? Why do men start to lose their ability to even identify or process their emotions? It's because that the environment that they live in is not hospitable to a man being able to express feelings and emotions. And if you do that for a long time, if you live in a very non-hospitable environment with feelings and emotions, you become numb, you become callous to your own feelings and emotions. And then you end up using the devil's tools, because what you're doing is you're not allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel. This is what society has already told you you should be doing, which is very traumatic, very abusive. But now you end up doing it to yourself, not knowing that you're actually being abusive to yourself. To give you an example of non-hospitable environments, let's say you use your hands a lot and you lift weights a lot, you use them in construction. The hands were not necessarily made to do this, or soft hands were not. So eventually you're going to develop calluses, so you don't feel that type of pain. You don't even notice it's there because you're in the middle of doing work, you're doing your job. And this is what happens with emotions as well. You become numb to them. And this could be a very positive thing on one side, but then there's a lot of negatives, and we'll go over this. So let's give some examples of normative masculine role requirements. And here we're looking at some basics like the restriction of emotional expression. So it already makes sense. Again, if you see a man and he is restricting emotional expression, you don't know if he's stoic, which is a positive, but you don't know if he has alexithymia, which is not positive. Also, men are expected to demonstrate status, demonstrate their toughness. Again, it helps to put your emotions aside if you want to be that type of person. A man should be presenting as being in control, having no fear, having little to no anxiety, not showing vulnerability. So again, everything points to having difficulty expressing, identifying, or processing emotions. We don't want that. So again, if you don't do that most of your life, how are you going to be good at it? And in the end, I'll show you how that can be very destructive to you. So those are examples of normative masculine role requirements by society and by men as well, because men look up to that. Now let's take a look at a meta-analysis, and we want to distill women's preferences and the type of men that they want to spend the rest of their life with. Maybe not for a day, maybe not for a week, maybe not even to just be friends with. I'm talking about somebody that they feel comfortable with, somebody who they think is going to be for safety, protection, a good provider, someone who could be a good family man. Things like this, what they're looking for is a stoic man with some status, someone who can control their emotions in the most difficult or stressful of times, someone who's disciplined, conscientious, consistent, dependable. So as you can see, all of these traits I'm mentioning, they dovetail perfectly with a man who has alexithymia. So we push this because we all seem to put alexithymia up at the top as being something that's very good. But again, I'll make that distinction. It can look like a person doesn't have emotions or have them or express them. That would be alexithymia. But on the stoic side, they have all those, but they act in a different way anyway. What else do women want? They want a good listener, a man who listens much more than he speaks. Again, we're going back to the stoic / alexithymia type of man. They want someone who's resilient, ambitious, a leader, physically dominating, someone who has a degree of money and power, again, showing status. How do you do this if you're an overly emotional man? You kind of don't. That's the answer. So we have to be able to bridge this gap. So where is alexithymia beneficial? Let me throw in some extra stuff here because I don't want somebody just, you could go to Wikipedia and look this stuff up, and why would you go to a YouTube channel then, right? Which I see a lot of people doing this, and I think it's a complete waste of time. So let's talk about this a little bit more specifically. How is it beneficial to have alexithymia? Well, let's name sports, for example. In sports, You might be nervous, you're scared, you make a mistake, you feel guilty for letting down your teammates. How long can you sit in this negativity? Well, in most games, you're in the middle of doing it at that time, so you have no time to sit in your feelings and emotions. So it's best to put them aside and do the action and to continue to do your job. So that's one thing. How about when you're trying to improve your status in life? Somebody like me, I was born into a situation where the area where I lived was great. Most people were, I would say, were very solidly in middle class to very high middle class, whereas I was not even close to that. And I work with a lot of people in this type of situation where the family doesn't have money, they don't have a lot of resources, they don't have an ability to move up the ladder in terms of status and their finances, so they'll have to go to school. They don't have a lot of good connections, so they're gonna have to work hard, right? They don't have anybody paying for their school, nothing like this. And time is of the essence because they don't have any money and they don't have any resources to eat and live normally. So they're gonna have to get through school somehow. Well, of the people that I work with, especially the ones on Medicaid, it's such an uphill battle trying to get traction with these people because they sit in their negativity of, this is going to be so hard, this is so difficult, nobody in my family has ever been successful, I'm depressed, I'm angry at the world sucks because of all these things. And you know what, in a lot of ways it does. But you can't sit in all that negativity. It doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. What does help is that you go online and you look up to see, are there any Pell Grants you can get? Are there any student loans you can get? Which colleges can you get into that maybe are a little bit less money? Maybe you need to go to community college first. Maybe you can't just get one job. Maybe you need to work 2 jobs and go to school. Oh, that's hard, it's difficult, I'm going to be depressed, I'm going to be sad, I'm going to be tired. Who cares? If you complain about those things, all the other rich kids that have families around them who are supporting them are going to be able to do all the things that you can't do. And so is it okay to sit in your emotions all the time? No, that's really not logical and it's not reasonable if you come from a very low socioeconomic situation. You're not going to do well if you sit in your emotions all the time. Now, you become a person of action. It's all about the action, not about the feeling. Again, is this helpful? It is helpful in certain things, like I said, but it's really going to run you into problems when you're in relationships. Because when you go into a relationship, you're not going to be thinking about what you need. You're not going to be thinking about your feelings, your emotions, and you're going to be worried about your partner's feelings and emotions and what their desires and needs are because you've shoved them down for so long. And like I said at the beginning of the show, if you continue to go through life not even trying to have a feeling, you're trying to have these emotions that you think are completely repulsive to you because they get in the way of you being successful, when you're in a relationship, you're not going to know you have them. And so you're going to be putting yourself into positions. There's a good chance you're going to put yourself into positions where you're not being treated well. You're being abused. You're being neglected. And you have no idea why you're even in the relationship because you're not asking yourself what you need from it, or you're not asking yourself why you're happy. You become happy when your partner is happy. And again, in terms of long-term relationships, this is not going to work. So last week, this is actually a part 2 from last week, I mentioned that I was married at a young age. And I started to go through some of the thoughts and feelings I had about that at the time that I barely knew. Let me continue with that a little bit. If somebody were to ask me, if I went through all those trials and tribulations to make the marriage work, even up to the actual the wedding, and then after that and all these things, if somebody would have slowed me down and said, hey, what are you actually feeling inside towards this girl? Are you in love? Do you love her? You know, if I'm being honest about it, and again, this is over 30 years past the time, so I think it's okay to talk about this now without really hurting anybody. I would say that I loved her in a way where Dr. Scott Peck would say in the book, he's got a book called The Road Less Traveled. He talks about love. And in this, he said, love is not a feeling. Love is a verb. Love is action. Love is what you do for somebody. And I believe that. I believe that to be true. However, I don't think it's completely true. I think it's a thing to say, like he says in it, well, people say they love coffee, they love chocolate. You don't love these things. These are just things that you might desire in some way, shape, or form. But there's no verb here. There's no action that you're doing something. So part of loving somebody is to be doing actions of service to help somebody to make their life better. So in that sense, I could say, yes, I loved. But in terms of the feeling, was I doing this because when I looked at somebody, I had this thought of, oh my God, you're my soulmate because you do all these things for me and you really care about my well-being? I would have to say no to that. Because again, if you have alexithymia and you're not telling people your needs and your wants and your desires, and the other person on the other side has this thought that they've been around men their whole life kind of, and they think that men don't have desires, they don't cry, they don't feel bad, they don't feel frustrated, they don't feel the need to be loved, they don't feel the need for compassion and nurturing and everything else, then they're going to be kind of silent and numb on their side as well. And so it doesn't work well in terms of having a good relationship. So no, I would say that I was all about the action and not much about the feeling. Another question that, as I talk about this, somebody mentioned this to me throughout my life. They said, well, why didn't you see any red flags? Like, didn't you know? I'm going to answer that. Here's the thing. When you grow up into a society that doesn't allow men to have feelings and emotions, and you live in an environment, let's say, that's less than ideal, to where your feelings and emotions actually just get in the way of doing your actions, I'll throw this in real quick, because a lot of people, their number one goal is to be happy. And that's okay, but when do you want to be happy, right? Happiness ensues over a period of time when you're doing the right things in order to get to a goal. But if your goal is to be happy, you're never going to get to a goal, because in order to get to that goal, it takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And so you're not going to be happy most of the time. Right? I wasn't happy working 2 jobs and then trying to work and go to school and do this and then run a relationship and all these things and getting 3 hours of sleep at night. I can't say that I was happy, but I was fulfilled because I was going in the direction that I wanted. So when you're in an environment, again, where you got to get the job done, regardless of how you feel, your whole life becomes one of invalidation. It becomes a whole life of not having feelings and emotions and instant gratification desires. You don't have any of that. And then as your life progresses, you get used to that, so you become numb to all those things. And so your whole life is a big red flag. But you don't see it as a red flag because that's all there is. So now when you're in a relationship, when somebody doesn't give you something back, when they don't seem to care about what you think or what you feel, you don't notice it because it's just another day in your life. So if you're, let's say as an example, if you're a goldfish and you're swimming in a fishbowl, you don't know you're swimming in that fishbowl. It's your life. It's what you do. You don't notice the difference. The only way a goldfish will ever notice the difference is if he gets taken out of that goldfish thing and gets thrown on the floor. Then pretty soon he's got a problem. And this is what I'm saying about alexithymia. You don't notice you have a problem until it gets so bad, and now you have to do something about it. So let me end the show with this, because again, I want to make sure that that I can splice the difference here. Alexithymia, difficulty expressing, identifying, and processing emotions, not being allowed to have feelings and emotions, and therefore you become numb to them. Stoicism, having feelings and emotions, feeling them very deeply, being able to process them, but still act in a logical way and in a way that uses reason and in a way that says, I'm going to control the things that I can control in order to make my life better and the people around me, their lives better as well. There's where the difference lies. So hopefully this was beneficial to you in some way. My name is Joe Peroni. This is the Rise Above Project. Thank you.